Why did a group of scholars shroud their work in secrecy? What drove Ikhwan al-Safa, the Brethren of Purity, to remain hidden while crafting one of the most profound collections of knowledge in Islamic history? In this podcast, we delve into the mystery of this elusive group. Why did they operate in the shadows? What made their ideas so controversial that secrecy became their shield? Drawing from books and transcripts, Omar and Layla explore the hidden world of Ikhwan al-Safa, piecing together the puzzle of their purpose, philosophy, and legacy.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking on a real head-scratcher, the Ikhwan al-Safa, a secret society of scholars operating in 10th century Iraq. Let me tell you, this is one of those groups that leaves more questions than answers.
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? They existed during the Abbasid Caliphate, a period often called the Golden Age of Islam. Picture this. Bustling centers of learning, like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. But the Ikhwan al-Safa, also known as the Brethren of Purity, they represent a different, more clandestine side to this intellectual landscape.
And that's what I find so intriguing. We're talking about a time of immense intellectual exchange, yet these scholars chose to operate in secrecy, leaving behind a collection of writings known as the Epistles of the Brethren of Purity with no names attached. Why the cloak and dagger approach?
It was a matter of survival. You see, the Ikhwan al-Safa were blending ideas that could have landed them in hot water. They combined Greek philosophy, specifically Neoplatonism, with their Islamic faith. Not a typical mix for the time.
Okay, so we're already seeing these guys were pushing boundaries. But what was so radical about blending philosophy and Islam?
Imagine this. You're in 10th century Iraq, and the prevailing view is that the Quran holds all the answers. But the Ikhwan al-Safa come along and say, hold on, reason and philosophy can actually help us purify our understanding of Islam. They saw philosophy as a tool to unlock deeper, more esoteric truths hidden within the Quran.
That's a bold claim. It's like they're saying we're going beyond the surface level. We're searching for the secret code. I have to wonder how that went over with the more orthodox scholars of the day.
Yeah, not well, as you can imagine. The transcript even quotes a Sunni scholar, Mahayana Tahiti, who was highly critical of the Ikhwan al-Safa, calling their ideas excited and unacceptable. That gives you a sense of the pushback they were facing.
So maybe that explains the secrecy. But this idea of esoteric interpretation, it keeps popping up. Can you break that down for us a bit? What makes it different from a literalist interpretation?
In a nutshell, esoteric interpretation, or ta'wil, looks for hidden meanings and symbolism within Scripture. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, searching for a deeper truth beyond the literal words on the page. In contrast, a literalist approach sticks to the surface-level meaning, taking the text at face value.
So the Ikhwan al-Safa were basically saying, don't just read the Quran, decode it. And they saw philosophy as the key to cracking that code. It makes their epistles sound even more intriguing. What kind of stuff did they actually write about?
They covered a mind-boggling range of topics in their 52 epistles. We're talking mathematics, cosmology, music, ethics, logic, and even politics. They were synthesizing knowledge from all over the known world, Greek, Persian, Indian, weaving it together with their Islamic beliefs.
It's like they were creating a blueprint for their ideal society, a society based on reason, spiritual understanding, and this deep philosophical approach to Islam. It makes you wonder, were they just a group of scholars sharing ideas, or were they aiming for something more? Were they a movement, maybe even a little bit dangerous?
As we dive deeper into their writings and the historical context, you'll see that the line between scholarly pursuit and a radical movement can get pretty blurry with the Ikhwan al-Safa.
Okay, so we've got mystery, philosophy, and maybe even a dash of danger. This is already shaping up to be a wild deep dive. Now, the transcript mentions this cryptic quote from the Ikhwan al-Safa themselves, saying they were asleep in the cave of our father Adam. What's with that?
Ah, yes, the cave metaphor. It's classic, Ikhwan al-Safa. Remember their emphasis on esoteric interpretation? Well, they're not talking about a literal cave here.
So what are they talking about?
It's a symbolic representation of the state of humanity before true knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. They believe that most people were trapped in a state of ignorance, a metaphorical cave, slumbering away from their true potential.
So they saw themselves as the wake-up call, like, hey, everyone, time to step out of the cave and into the light of knowledge.
Exactly. They believed it was their mission to guide others out of that darkness and towards a purer, more enlightened understanding of Islam. One that embraced reason, philosophy, and esoteric interpretation. And that, my friend, is where things get really interesting. Because remember, this is the 10th century. It's not like they could just tweet their philosophy or start a podcast. They had to be strategic, operating within a society that might not be ready for their radical ideas.
I guess that makes sense. But, this idea of a chosen few leading the way out of the cave, it sounds a bit elitist, don't you think?
It's easy to see it that way. But their writings suggest a more nuanced perspective. They believe that everyone had the potential for spiritual growth, but not everyone was at the same stage of the journey.
So it's more like, we're not better, just further along the path.
Precisely. They believed that the masses needed the structure of religious law and literal interpretations to guide them. But for those capable of deeper reflection, philosophy and esotericism offered a path to a higher level of understanding.
So they weren't trying to overthrow traditional Islam, just expand it.
In a way, yes. They saw themselves as loyal friends, guiding each other and hopefully others toward spiritual purity.
It's like they were creating a secret curriculum for spiritual enlightenment. And their epistles were the textbooks. We already touched on the range of subjects they covered, but what was their ultimate goal with these writings?
Everything, in their view, pointed back to purification of the soul and drawing closer to the divine. They believed that every branch of knowledge, whether it was mathematics or cosmology, could be a step on that spiritual journey.
It's a pretty ambitious goal. It makes me wonder if they had any specific spiritual practices, rituals, or anything like that. The transcript doesn't go into much detail.
You're right, the details are scarce. But there are tantalizing hints that they may have incorporated practices from Ismailism, a branch of Shia Islam known for its own embrace of esoteric interpretation. But remember, the Ikhwan al-Safa were also deeply committed to reason and logic. It makes you wonder how those two sides, the mystical and the rational, coexisted in their worldview.
I think that tension between the mystical and the rational might be at the heart of what makes the Ikhwan al-Safa so fascinating. They weren't afraid to hold seemingly contradictory ideas at the same time. And speaking of seemingly contradictory ideas, what about their views on the afterlife? The transcript mentions they didn't believe in a literal heaven and hell. That's a pretty big departure from mainstream Islamic thought.
Right. They weren't focused on the physical rewards and punishments often associated with the afterlife. Instead, they embraced this idea of a spiritual journey back towards unity with the divine, which aligns with their Neoplatonic influences.
So less about fire and brimstone, more about the soul's evolution.
Exactly. They even had a unique interpretation of Barzakh, the intermediate state between death and the Day of Judgment.
Oh yeah, that's the part that really caught my eye. They saw it as a cycle of rebirth. Reincarnation in Islam. That's not something you hear every day.
It certainly challenges our typical assumptions about Islamic thought. But for the Ikhwan al-Safa, death wasn't the end. It was part of a continuous process of purification and spiritual growth. They believed that souls could undergo multiple cycles of death and rebirth, kind of like climbing a ladder, until they achieved ultimate union with the divine.
So they were weaving together Islamic beliefs, Greek philosophy, and ideas about reincarnation. It's incredible how they synthesized these different threads of thought. It's almost like they were time travelers, picking and choosing ideas from across history and cultures.
It's certainly a testament to their intellectual curiosity and their willingness to venture beyond the confines of traditional thinking. And speaking of venturing beyond the confines, they also had this fascinating take on time itself.
Okay, here's where it gets really mind-bending. They believed in a cyclical view of time. The transcript mentions this idea that the 7 days of creation represent 7,000-year cycles, like each day is 1,000 years.
Precisely. And each of these cycles was associated with a different prophet.
Wait, so they're saying history repeats itself in these grand 7,000-year cycles, and each cycle is marked by a prophet who guides humanity. What happens at the end of the 7th cycle?
According to the Ikhwan al-Safa, the 7th cycle culminates in the final day of judgment. And before that, the Mahdi, a messianic figure in Islamic tradition, would appear to usher in an era of justice and peace.
This is some serious cosmic level stuff. It's like they created their own grand narrative of history, blending scripture with this cyclical view of time. This is one of those deep dives that really makes you realize just how much we take for granted about our own perception of time and history.
It's a powerful reminder that our understanding of the world is shaped by our cultural and historical context. And groups like the Ikhwan al-Safa challenge us to step outside of those familiar frameworks and consider alternative ways of seeing things.
So we've got secret societies, esoteric knowledge, reincarnation, and a cyclical view of time that makes your head spin. I have to ask, did anyone actually read these epistles besides the Ikhwan al-Safa themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Their writings actually had a significant impact on later Islamic thinkers. Scholars like Ibn Sina, al-Biruni, and even the controversial Ibn Taymiyyah engaged with their ideas.
That's amazing. So even though they operated in secrecy, their ideas spread and influenced some major figures in Islamic thought. It seems like they achieved a kind of intellectual immortality, even if their names remain hidden.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes their story so compelling. These were scholars who were passionate about knowledge and spiritual exploration, willing to risk everything to pursue their ideas, and they left behind a legacy that continues to resonate centuries later.
So they were more than just bookworms, they were intellectual rebels, planting seeds of thought that would blossom long after they were gone. It makes you wonder if they knew the impact they would have.
That's a great question. It's hard to say for sure, but I have a feeling they'd be pleased to know that their writings sparked debate, inspired new interpretations, and challenged conventional thinking for generations to come.
You know, as we're delving into all this, I can't help but notice a recurring theme. The Ikhwan al-Safa seem to have had this deep belief in the power of knowledge, not just for intellectual understanding, but for spiritual transformation.
Absolutely. They saw knowledge as the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe and our place within it. They believed that by studying everything from math to music to scripture, we could purify our souls and draw closer to the divine.
And this idea of the soul's journey, moving out of the cave of ignorance toward enlightenment, it makes me wonder, what did they believe about the human being's role in all of this? Were we just passive recipients of knowledge, or did we have a more active role to play?
That's a fascinating question, and it leads us to one of the most intriguing aspects of their thought, their concept of the microcosm and macrocosm.
Okay, now we're really getting into the deep end of the pool. What's this microcosm, macrocosm business all about?
They believed that the human being, what they called the microcosm, was a reflection of the universe, the macrocosm. In other words, everything that exists in the vast universe also exists within us, just on a smaller scale. It's an idea with deep roots in Neoplatonism.
So they're saying we're like miniature universes walking around. That's pretty wild.
It is. And for the Ikhwan al-Safa, this connection between the microcosm and macrocosm meant that by understanding ourselves, our souls, and our potential for growth, we could gain insights into the workings of the entire universe.
So the journey inward is also a journey outward.
Precisely. By purifying our souls, expanding our knowledge, and cultivating virtue, we are not only improving ourselves, but also contributing to the harmony of the universe. It's a powerful idea, isn't it?
It definitely is. It's like they're saying we're not just observers of the universe, we're active participants in its unfolding. And the more we learn and grow, the more we contribute to the overall good.
That's a great way to put it. It's a vision of human potential that is both inspiring and empowering. And it reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is not just an intellectual exercise. It's a deeply spiritual and ethical endeavor with implications that extend far beyond ourselves.
You know, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, I can't help but feel a sense of awe for the Ikhwan al-Safa, their intellectual ambition, their courage to challenge conventional thinking, and their unwavering belief in the power of knowledge. It's truly remarkable.
I agree. They were pioneers in their own right, exploring uncharted intellectual territories, and leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire and challenge us today.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've explored their secret society, their controversial ideas, their unique blend of philosophy and Islam, their cosmic view of time, and their profound understanding of the human being's place in the universe. But there's one question that keeps nagging at me. If these guys were so brilliant and influential, why don't we know their names? I mean, we're talking about a group that left a lasting mark on intellectual history, but their identities are still a mystery. It just doesn't add up.
It's the ultimate riddle of the Ikhwan al-Safa. And to be honest, there's no easy answer. Some scholars believe they were intentionally anonymous to protect themselves from persecution.
That makes sense, considering some of their more controversial ideas. But wouldn't at least one name have slipped out over the centuries?
You'd think so, right? But the secrecy surrounding their organization was incredibly tight. They were like the ninjas of the intellectual world. Another theory is that anonymity was part of their philosophy. It's like they were saying, it's not about individual glory, it's about the ideas themselves.
So they were more interested in leaving a legacy of ideas, not personal fame. I can see how that would fit with their whole, we're just guides, not gurus approach.
Exactly. And remember, They lived in a culture that placed a high value on humility and putting the community above the individual. But honestly, the true reason for their anonymity might forever remain a secret, lost to the sands of time.
I guess some mysteries are just meant to stay unsolved. But thinking about the Ikhwan al-Safa operating in the shadows makes me wonder if there are similar groups out there today, hidden networks of knowledge seekers, exploring forbidden ideas, passing down wisdom in secret. It sounds like the plot of a Dan Brown novel.
Wouldn't that be something? And with the internet, it's easier than ever for people to connect and exchange ideas anonymously. Who knows what kind of intellectual underground might be flourishing online?
It's like the digital age has given us the perfect tools for creating a modern-day Ikhwan al-Safa. Encrypted messages, secret forums, online libraries of forbidden texts. It's both exciting and a little bit unsettling, don't you think? I mean, who controls the flow of information in these hidden networks? And how do you separate genuine wisdom from misinformation?
Those are important questions to consider. And they highlight the challenges and opportunities of knowledge sharing in the digital age. But whether it's the 10th century or the 21st century, the human desire to seek out hidden knowledge, to explore the mysteries of existence, that seems to be a constant.
It's like we're all drawn to those forbidden corners of the intellectual landscape. And groups like the Ikhwan al-Safa, whether we know their names or not, remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is often a risky, rebellious, and ultimately deeply human endeavor.
They teach us that true knowledge requires courage, open-mindedness, and a willingness to question everything, and that the journey itself, the pursuit of understanding, is just as important as the destination.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Ikhwan al-Safa, I want to leave you with this thought. What mysteries are you drawn to? What knowledge do you seek? And are you willing to step outside of your comfort zone, to challenge your own assumptions, and explore those uncharted territories of the mind? Keep those questions with you as you continue your own journey of discovery.